Yes, guys, and a welcome from me. This is Championship Manager 0102. Off topic, Rise of the Footsoldier. So, just a little discussion really about what they say. It's one of the greatest UK franchise of all times. I'm a little bit unsure about that status, to be honest with you, because I think James Bond holds it above it personally. Although I know James Bond is not so much the franchise, it's a different film. But away from that, right, I mean, the films Rise of the Footsoldier, they're just, for me, they are great. They are really great. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory here on Rise of the Footsoldier 1. When I first went to watch it, back in 2007, I found it purely by accident. It's because I was tracking somebody at the time, and it was Frank Harper. Now, if you don't know who Frank Harper is, he was the guy from Football Factory that played support to Danny Dyer. Frank Harper, he was also in Lock, Stock, Bend It Like Beckham, and a few other bits and pieces, and I thought he was a great actor, and that's the only reason I found Rise of the Footsoldier. And although he didn't really have a big part in Rise of the Footsoldier, watching Rise of the Footsoldier was just, there was no turning back. For me, Rise of the Footsoldier 1 probably is, out of the 6 that there is, I don't know, I'd probably put it as the second best. I mean, Ricky Harnett plays Carlton Leach, and it's all based on a true story, which I'll get more to that in a moment. But Ricky Harnett portrays Carlton Leach absolutely brilliant. I think Ricky Harnett is phenomenal in it, to be honest with you. And I feel that maybe in terms of the film, the story, it steers away from the Ricky Harnett side of things into that of the traditional Essex boys, being Tony Tucker, Pat Tate and Craig Rolfe. Now, you know, I felt that it steered away. It was all being told as Carlton Leach's story, so I get it. The film itself, though, right, it portrays that Carlton and Tony Tucker were absolutely the best of friends. But that's how it's portrayed, as in he lost his mates. But I plural that, mates. The film showcases it was really only Tony Tucker, and they weren't as close as what it's being portrayed. And if you watch the film, you'll know that. Rise of the Footsoldier 2... Part 2 continues with Carlton Leach, the aftermath of the death of his friends, and how he come to terms with it. Now, I weren't a big fan of Part 2, the truth be told. I think it was unnecessary. I don't mind, I mean, I really like Part 3. Part 3 is a different angle. Part 3, Rise of the Footsoldier, the Pat Tate story, I really like that. It was all to do with Pat Tate. So almost like Part 1, which was Carlton Leach's story, you know, how he became a Rise of the Footsoldier, how he, you know, the football terrorists, that sort of stuff. Pat Tate, I mean, I really enjoyed that. I think Larry Lamb was in that as well, weren't he? And I thought I'd like to have seen more screen time from him. And I think the prison scenes were absolutely brilliant. And one person, of course, that was in number 3, that was also in number 1, that is the legendary Billy Murray, who, of course, I don't know what you want to call him, Don Beach from The Bill, Johnny Allen from EastEnders, is absolutely brilliant. I thought he was sensational, and he played a big part in number 3. Now, Rise of the Footsoldier Marbella, which essentially was number 4, was almost like a second part to number 3. Again, a bit like Part 2, and it was a bit irrelevant, really. It was a sort of a second part, as I said. So you could argue. I mean, it wasn't too bad, but again, you know, like I said, it was more about the Frank Tate thing. Although Larry Lamb wasn't in it, it was centred around him. So it's a tricky one, really. I felt that was a bit of a tricky one. Now, number 5, Rise of the Footsoldier Origins, that is a Tony Tucker story. So, and again, I like this because it was a different angle. I felt it was a different angle. And Tony Tucker, played by Terry Stone, is absolutely brilliant. I think he plays his part brilliant. Right from the off, you know, he played it really, really good. So I was half expecting a second part to that, like they did with the Pat Tate, like they did with Carlton Leach. And instead, we get Rise of the Footsoldier Vengeance as a 6th instalment, which was basically a 3rd instalment of Pat Tate. Craig Fairbrass, who played Pat Tate, he was in the Origins. He had a small part, I think he had movie commitments, but he was obviously the main man in number 3 and 4, and he was the main man in number 6. Now, for me, they steered away from the whole true story concept. I mean, I don't mind that, but don't keep emphasising based on a true story, because we've been through that shit, right? Let's away from that and keep it going, because the end of Vengeance, forget the true story, was really good. It was really, really good. And you've got to really know your franchise to understand it and appreciate it. For example, right, the Origins, Billy Murray was barely in it. He had one line, literally, at the very end in a post-credit scene, along with Eddie Webber. They both had one-liners on a credit scene. And I remember reading some people saying, I don't understand, it doesn't make any sense. But it would make sense if you'd watched the first few. Now, part of me thinks, you know, you're not going to be able to attract people if you're going to make a scene that's not going to make any sense to them. Yes, it makes sense to me, but if you were, you know, do you know what I mean? And you've really got to have watched them all to have understood it. Now, Vengeance, of course, we're going to a different dimension there, because... spoiler alert here for Rise of the Footsoldier Vengeance. Kenny, played by Josh Myers, is killed, and he's found dead on a roller coaster. And although he does exploit that on his Instagram, he's always going to put the same pictures of him bloodied up. Craig Fairbrass goes on a sort of a rampage to try and get the person responsible, and he doesn't even get to that, to be honest with you. That's how it ends. It ends really for a number 7, which is currently being filmed, Rise of the Footsoldier Ibiza. Now, the caption is, "This is where it ends." Now, whether that means this will be the end, I don't know. But I'm pretty certain now we've completely lost the plot with regards the true story concept. You know, in all fairness. With number 5, because I followed all the build-up to number 5, the Origins, it was directed by the great Nick Neven. Nick Neven is absolutely brilliant. Between him and Andrew Loveday, they are such a great fucking partnership. It is unreal. And of course, with that partnership, and then you've got Craig Fairbrass, do we call him the lead? Probably in number 4 you would have Terry Stone, Roland Manukian. What is he? Is he Teddy Mitchell in fucking EastEnders? They've all been in EastEnders, haven't they? I'm not a big fan of him, to be honest with you. He doesn't play the part correct. Now, for those of you that have followed this franchise, you'll know that there is also Bonded by Blood. Bonded by Blood 1. Terry Stone played Tony Tucker again, but Tamaha Hassan played Pat Tate. You know what? It was a little bit really off the mark, really. I mean, Neil Maskell played. Oh, what's his name? Fucking hell! I'm on a complete fucking mind blank. Craig Rolfe played Neil, and you know, then you've got the Fall of the Essex Boys, which Tony Tucker was played by someone different, as was Pat Tate, as was Craig Rolfe. There's a lot of variations, and this is what I mean about they're steering away. The Fall of the Essex Boys was actually very good. Nick Neven played a part in that, and it was very, very good. But there are other variations. I think the original Essex Boys was 2004, and I think it was Sean Bean, but it was nothing like what was to come 3 years later in Rise of the Footsoldier. I believe there was something in motion to have some sort of prequel to Rise of the Footsoldier, which Ricky Harnett, Carlton Leach, they were to sort of, I think they had a bit of a feud. There was a feud, weren't there, between Carlton Leach and Terry Stone. In fact, there was a feud. I've watched I've listened to the podcasts, and they're actually absolutely brilliant. I'd like to have seen more from Frank Harper, but he did play a big part. No doubt about that. Tony Denham played the same role when in the Fall of the Essex Boys. Of course, Mickey Steele was played by Billy Murray, of course, in most of them, and that's of course that credit part where Mickey Steele pops up with Eddie Webber. You know, it is. You know, there are some great concepts. Jamie Foreman, I thought Jamie Foreman is in number 3 and number 6. He was in EastEnders as fucking hell, Derek Brannon. But there was one person I watched, particularly on number 6. He didn't have a big part, and that is Jeff Bell. Jeff Bell. Now, I think Jeff Bell is fucking fantastic. He was great in Green Street. He's been great in a few bits and pieces. And, of course, he was in Mobland in most of the whole, I think it was in the whole season of Mobland. Absolutely fucking brilliant. He really is. So, you know, what's installed in number 7, I don't know. They do need to end it. And I remember reading this thing, and I was watching an interview with Craig Fairbrass. Whilst he continues to be supplied with the Queen's Head paper, so money, you know, and whilst there's still a demand, then who is he to say no? And I get that. I really do get that. They are currently filming number 7 in Southend. It's going to be Rise of the Footsoldier Ibiza. But we shall see. Let me know your views on the Rise of the Footsoldier franchise. It's not a big budget concept, but I actually think that they're very good. I mean, Vinnie Jones, of course, he was the standout person that came into number 5. Vinnie Jones, to be honest with you, Vinnie Jones didn't really add too much for me. Me personally, he didn't add too much. For me, it was overshadowed by Craig Fairbrass. You know, that's a short and long. If you're looking at really, for me, if I'm to rate all 6, I'm going to possibly put number 3 as my favourite, followed by number 1, followed by number 5. You know, I think those 3, and that goes to what I said. It's sort of different angles. You know, and I think that's really important to have a different perspective. There are a lot of goofs. You're always going to find goofs, right? And I hate finding goofs that I feel that shouldn't have happened, because the year is based on the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. You know, and I think you find a lot of goofs that you think, well, that's wrong. And for me, as a professional director, they shouldn't make those goofs. I'm not saying I can do better, but I believe I can. And that's it from me, guys. Till the next time. It's Take It Easy.